y'all, it's your girl Terica, and welcome to the Just a Thought podcast, a safe space to process thoughts and emotions that are common, not talked about, or never really thought about. Let's allow the most authentic parts of ourselves to be seen as the love and guidance of God reveals and heals. So I've been thinking, and this question has kind of been replaying in my head for the last week or so, but it's, why do we settle? Is it because we are afraid of nothing better ever coming along? Or is it that we truly believe that we aren't deserving of more? For me personally, it's a mixture of both. So the idea of I'm not deserving of more than enough or more is not a verbatim thought, but more so a belief that has been built up over time along the way. So if someone wants to straight up ask me if I believe that I'm not deserving of more or the best, my initial reaction would be to respond in like a definite tone of like, no, like, are you kidding me? No, I know that I deserve the best. But I think deep down, my heart is screaming, yes, I do somewhat believe that. And so why is that? And knowing that and having the awareness of that, like, what do we do about it? So I want to start off by giving some possible ways that this thought can be picked up and rooted as a belief. So an example could be seeing family members live at the same stagnant level throughout generations, or failed attempts of progression or movement. And every time you try to do better or do more, it's like you're almost met with resistance. Or it can be words spoken over us that we might have forgotten about, or that we may even be replaying in the back of our minds. So there are many different ways and opportunities that have allowed us to develop this belief or idea that we are not deserving of more. For me, it's a combination of things. So for example, family situations that were outside of my control that have been replaying in the back of my mind, and it causes me to try to control the outcome of certain situations. So, you know, like how sometimes you can find yourself praying and you're telling God that you're completely surrendering this area or this thing to Him, but before the prayer is over, you're already trying to figure out how to fix it. Yep, that's me, right? So I'm trying to find a way to control it, to control the process, to control the outcome. So the problem with this is that control leads to the detriment of failed hope, and it's because of our own doing. So the thoughts or the idea of, okay, God, I knew it was never going to happen for me, or God, I knew you were never going to do it for me. All of those thoughts can be a product of our own hands. So I've been trying to be in the habit of retracing my disappointment, because retracing it can help me to see who and what is really at fault. And so this whole issue is the reason that it's very important to develop a solid understanding of the importance of surrendering our desires to the divine alignment of God's will. So that can kind of seem difficult, especially when our desires are not directly leading us to sin, or not directly opposing the word, or they don't lead us down a path to destruction. But I think this exact thought is the main point for pursuing divine alignment with God's will, right? So it's because He truly knows the best way, because He truly knows the best me, which is the real me. So He knows all that I've tried to manipulate to my own desired outcome, but most importantly, He knows all that I'm capable of doing, seeing, and experiencing with His leading. His path is a direct path to who He created me to be, right? So His path may be unconventional and uncomfortable, but it's insulated with His love, direction, and provision. And on the flip side of that, our own paths of control are filled with unnecessary challenges, pushback, and suffering. So I've been trying to remind myself that life is already hard enough. Okay, so why make it harder by opposing or walking outside of His will? So now I want to speak to this belief that I have, and you might have as well. First thing first is that this simply is not true. The truth is we are deserving of God's best. So despite what you might have seen those around you achieve or fail to achieve, their story is not yours. Their path is not yours to take. Next is I want us to understand that we are capable of handling and managing the more. If God is allowing you to walk into it, then you have to rest in knowing that He will provide you with the strength to stand firm in it. And the only one that is able to determine who is deserving of more is the one that is able to give more. And His merit for determining is something that we will never understand, but we can trust in it and we can know that we belong in the more if He is calling us to it. And lastly, settling is not our portion. He didn't create us to give us scraps, and He didn't forget about us. Okay, so if you think that better has passed over you, then I encourage you to meditate on Psalms 84:11, as it says that He withholds no good thing. And you are included in this promise. And you walk in this promise by being in divine alignment with His will. Okay, so I have to say one of my favorite passages of scripture is the story of the prodigal son in Luke 15:11 through 31. And Luke is filled with a lot of different parables that Jesus provided to give us great wisdom and teaching. And the story of the prodigal son is one of my favorites because it just holds so much revelation. And one of the revelations that it holds and I love is this knowing and understanding of who our Father really is. And so it makes me question, why do we subject ourselves to things that are beneath God's best for us? So I kind of want to jump into that. I'll be paraphrasing from the NLT version. I recommend that you maybe pause the episode right here and read the passage in your version of choice, and then come back and finish the episode. So there was a man that had 2 sons. One of them was younger and was eager to receive his fair share of his father's estate and live and do life as he pleased. So we can see that he indeed did decide to live his life, and he decided to live it to the fullest. So he did that by completely spending all of his inheritance. And after it ran out, there came a famine, and he knew that he needed to take matters into his own hands in order to survive. And so scripture says that he began to starve. So you know what he did? He persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and he was sent into the fields to feed the pigs. And not only was he feeding pigs, he was so hungry that the pig feed started to look appetizing to him. So let's pause to look at a couple things really quickly. Why did he have to persuade the farmer? I think that sometimes the very things and people that we are trying to settle for aren't even convinced that they are our best. So their ability to provide is very limited, but we convince ourselves that it will do because at least it's something. Next, I question how many times is our reason for settling tied to a scarcity mindset. So this idea of if I don't do this particular thing and if I don't do it now, then I might not survive, right? So you might say I might not survive emotionally without this person, or I might not survive financially if I don't take this job, or I might not survive mentally if I sever this relationship. Because how and when will we get another way? So that mindset of I have to take this or I have to do this because I don't know if something better will ever come. So back to the story. Y'all, our boy was down bad, like bad. But the scripture says that he finally came to his senses and was like, hold up, wait a minute. Even the servants in my father's house have enough food and I'm sitting up here hungry, starving. So he was like, you know what? I'm going to just go back home and see if my father would allow me into his house. And so he told himself, he was like, I'm going to humble myself and I'm going to admit to sinning against heaven and my father. And the next part of his plan really shows how humble he had become by saying that he knows that he is not any longer, or he knows that he's no longer worthy of being called his father's son. And he would just be pleased to be taken in as a hired servant. And what a difference in his character from the beginning to now. Okay, so he went home, and while still like kind of far away off from his father's house. His father could see him. And scripture says that he was filled with love and compassion. Again, that's a whole nother revelation. But when he came to his father, he gave his speech to his father that he had earlier thought out. But he was only able to get out the part about not being worthy of being called his son. Some theologians suggest that he was only able to get that part out and not finish his speech because his father interrupted and instructed the servants to bring the finest robe for him and to kill a calf that they had been fattening. So during that time, the tradition was that a fattening calf was used for banquets or moments of importance that needed to be celebrated. So I think it's kind of interesting to kind of think about, because if you're a parent and you went ahead and gave your child all of this inheritance, yes, you are excited to see them come home. But also, boy, what did you do with all that money? That would be my first question, right? So yeah, I'm glad you're home, but where's all that money? That's not the father's heart. That's not what his initial thought was. So scripture goes on to describe the struggle that the older brother had with his brother returning. And there's an interaction between him and his father. And truly, that one, for real, y'all, is really like a whole revelation in and of itself. But we're just sticking to this, okay? So the passage ends with the father proclaiming that, okay, the reason that we're doing all of this celebration is because the prodigal son was lost and now he was found. So again, how often do we settle for things and people because it's the only thing that we see, and we think that we know what is best for ourselves? So the prodigal son had gotten so deep within this desire of living under his own control that he forgot who his father was and where he really belonged. So that's why being in proper alignment with God is so important, is because it allows us to be protected, sustained, and even hidden in times of despair and disaster. But just as the revelation came to the prodigal son of remembering his birthright, I really do believe and pray that it would be revealed within our own hearts that we belong to an absolute perfect father. And we do not have to succumb ourselves to anything less than what we deserve, and that is his best. So to close out the episode, I really want to give you some practical tips to remind yourself that you are deserving of all that he has for you. First thing first is literally ask yourself, is this God's best for me? And to be quite honest with you, I stole this from my therapist because she's always asking me this question, and it always convicts me to the core. So am I settling for something or someone out of fear that God will or can do anything better? So really, when you're thinking about, taking a job, or you're thinking about entering into some type of relationship with someone, whether it be romantic or platonic, really ask yourself, is this God's best for me? So the next thing I want to encourage you to do is to pray to be in his will. So really allow yourself to be open to whatever he says, even if it's something that you might have been running from, something that you may not fully agree with or understand, allowing yourself to be open to it. And he may not reveal the entire plan. He only may reveal just a little bit to get you started. But you have to trust that his gentle leading is going to lead you into the correct direction. So that point is leading me actually into my next point, which is don't be afraid to let go of people or opportunities or things that he reveals are not a part of his plan and are not his best for you. So you have to remember that no does not mean never. Sometimes it just means not right now, or not that, or not them. And it's okay to let things go. Me letting something go or letting someone go does not equal or does not equate to me missing out on the best thing that will ever happen to me. That's just not true. And so the amazing thing about having a trusting relationship with God is that his ability to reveal, align, and lead is not based on our own personal track record of trust. And I am so glad about it. Okay. Because sometimes we let people down, not on purpose. Sometimes we do it just because we're human and we cannot do everything that we promise, or sometimes we just drop the ball. And I'm so glad that God does not merit his trust or our ability to trust in him based off of our track record of trust. So this idea that God is sovereign and that he will always be trustworthy. He was trustworthy yesterday, today, and he will be trustworthy forevermore. So knowing that he is consistent in his trust and my ability to trust in him, or my foundation or confidence of being able to trust in him, should never change, because he will forever be trustworthy. Next, I think it's important to be content while waiting for his best to be released in the natural. So even when you don't see it and it's been a while and you feel like kind of taking the control again, remembering that maybe this is a season of contentment. And being content doesn't mean that I don't believe or that I don't think that I will ever obtain. It just means that if I don't, then God, I'm okay with being here with you and what you have provided. And lastly, I want to encourage you to examine areas in your life that you might have lost hope, and truly ask yourself, have I lost hope in this area because I have tried to control the situation? I've tried to control the outcome, and the outcome is not what I intended. And then I find myself some type of way blaming God or believing that God doesn't want this for me. And so, as I stated earlier, control and the failed outcome of control truly leads to the detriment of failed hope. And the enemy will only love for us to lose all hope and all expectancy of what God can and wants to do in our life. So I want us to know that we truly are deserving of more than we know. We're deserving of more than we think. We're deserving of more than we're able to obtain ourselves. And that truly comes with proper alignment of God's will, because I have to be fully committed to him and where he wants me to go in order to receive the more that he has for me. And so I want to encourage you to really reflect upon this episode, really pray and ask God to show you maybe some areas that you have been trying to hold on and control yourself, and ask him to give you the courage and the understanding that you can trust him and that you can fully give it to him. And I don't just encourage you to do this. This is something that I'm also going to be practicing as well, because if I'm being completely honest, it's hard. And I believe that he knows for some of us it is really hard, and he is able and willing to walk it through and walk it out with us. So I will see you all in the next episode.